It was a Tuesday evening when my friend Lisa, who worked the closing shift at our family-owned coffee shop, nestled deep in the woods, miles away from the nearest town, experienced something she'll never forget. From the entries in her diary and CCTV visuals, I can piece together the horrifying events that unfolded that night. Lisa wrote about how the sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the nearly empty highway. The eerie silence of the forest was unsettling, and she was counting down the minutes until she could close up and head home. The coffee shop had an old-world charm with its wooden beams and cozy corners, but that night it felt suffocating. The wind howled outside, making the trees dance menacingly. She glanced at the clock. Only an hour left. Suddenly, the door creaked open and a man stepped in. He was tall, with a worn-out trench coat and a hat that shadowed his face. His presence immediately sent a chill down Lisa's spine. She forced a smile and asked what he'd like to order.
Good evening. What can I get for you?
She asked, her voice trembling slightly. He ordered a black coffee, his voice deep and raspy. As Lisa prepared his drink, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching her intently. She handed him the coffee.
Here you go,
she said, trying to maintain her composure.
Is there anything else you need?
She asked, their fingers brushing briefly. His touch was ice cold. The man took a seat in the far corner, away from the light. He didn't drink his coffee, just sat there, staring into the dark woods outside. Lisa tried to busy herself with closing tasks, but her eyes kept drifting back to him. The minutes dragged by, each tick of the clock amplifying her unease. Suddenly, the lights flickered and a gust of wind blew through the shop, rattling the windows. Lisa turned to see the man still in his seat, now staring directly at her. Gathering her courage, she walked over to him. She asked,
Sir, are you okay?
Her voice barely above a whisper. He slowly lifted his head, and for the first time, she saw his face. His eyes were hollow, and his skin looked like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. He whispered something under his breath, words she couldn't quite make out. Leaning in closer, she heard him say,
"They're coming for you."
Lisa's blood ran cold. Before she could respond, he vanished. One moment he was there. The next, he was gone. Panic set in. She looked around frantically, but there was no sign of him. The door hadn't opened, and there were no footsteps leading away. It was as if he had evaporated into thin air. The shop felt colder, the shadows longer. Lisa grabbed her phone to call for help.
Damn it, not now.
She cursed, shaking the phone in frustration as there was no signal. The landline was dead too. She was completely isolated, miles away from anyone who could help. Her heart pounded as she heard a faint whispering coming from the woods. She bolted the door and turned off the lights, hoping to hide from whatever was out there. The whispering grew louder, now accompanied by the sound of footsteps crunching on the gravel outside. She peeked through the window, but saw nothing. Suddenly, the whispering stopped, replaced by a deafening silence. Lisa held her breath, listening intently. Then, without warning, the windows shattered and a freezing wind swept through the shop, knocking over chairs and tables. She ducked behind the counter, her heart racing. The cold wind seemed to carry voices, eerie and distant. Lisa heard her name being called, softly at first, then louder and more insistent.
Who's there? What do you want?
She shouted, her voice cracking. It was the same raspy voice of the man from earlier. Gathering all her courage, She stood up and faced the room. The cold had intensified, and a thick fog was seeping in through the broken windows. In the midst of the fog, she saw them, shadowy figures moving slowly towards her. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their whispers filled her head, making it hard to think. She backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The figures closed in, their hands reaching out, cold and clammy. Lisa felt a sharp pain in her chest, as if her heart was being squeezed. The figures surrounded her, their whispers now a cacophony of terror. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The last thing she saw was their glowing eyes, full of malice. When Lisa came to, the shop was empty again, the fog gone. She was lying on the floor, gasping for breath. She looked around, disoriented. Everything was as it had been, except for the shattered windows and the lingering chill in the air. She stumbled to her feet, her body aching. As she made her way to the door, she saw something written on the wall in what looked like blood. "You're next." Her blood ran cold. She had to get out of there, but the door wouldn't budge. She whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. Desperation set in. She ran to the back door, but it was locked too. Panic surged through her. She could hear the whispering again, closer this time. She felt a cold hand on her shoulder and spun around. She screamed into the emptiness, but no one was there. The room started to spin, the voices growing louder. Lisa dropped to her knees, clutching her head. Suddenly, everything went silent. She looked up and saw the man standing in front of her, his hollow eyes boring into hers. He smiled, a cold, cruel smile, and whispered,
It's over.
The last thing she felt was a searing pain in her chest, then darkness. When they found her the next morning, she was lying on the floor, lifeless, with a look of pure terror on her face. They said it was a heart attack, but I knew the truth. From Lisa's diary, I could tell the man, the shadows, they were real. And now, they were coming for whoever stepped into that cursed coffee shop on the highway, surrounded by nothing but miles of woods. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more exciting content. If you have your own terrifying experiences, send them in, and maybe you'll hear your story next. Until then, stay safe and remember, some stories are better left alone. See you in the next video. Bye!